Good evening, and it gives me great pleasure to get an opportunity to speak in this great event, Clash of the Titans, hosted by the International Society of Pediatric Neurosurgery. I have to confess that ever since we started this program about a year and a half ago, I have steadfastly avoided being a panelist. But of course, my dear friend Nelsie Zenon has insisted that I end my staying away from being a speaker in this debate and insisted that I speak, which is why I'm here today. And the motion that we're talking about, of course, is that teaching pediatric neurosurgery after the pandemic will change dramatically forever. And I have to confess that the very fact that the ISPN Education Committee is hosting the 20th episode of a virtual debate, the Clash of the Titans, suggests that the ISPN has indeed taken my side of the debate, which means taken the stance that they accept that teaching pediatric neurosurgery will change, and therefore we need to invest in events like Clash of the Titans for the future. And in fact, this debate could end by my just showing you the slide as proof thereof. But Nelsie would be unhappy, so I have to take this to the level of a formal debate. And the first thing I would like to do is to acknowledge the stature and the contribution of my opponent, who you've just heard, Graciela, the first woman president of our society. And remember that whatever I say, rubbishing her message, does in no means reduce my respect for the messenger. Let's start off with some definitions to tell you what our contention is from this side of the debating floor. Education, in what do we mean by education in pediatric neurosurgery? Well, to me, education is not the art of answering questions. Education is the science of questioning answers. And therefore, as educationers or teachers, if you like, or faculty, it is our job to ensure that those who attend courses learn to question the answers rather than answer questions. What does the word dramatically refer to? Well, dramatically refers to an event which occurs in such suddenness that it has a huge impact, be it scientific, social, or emotional. And the word forever in the motion means, for the purpose of this debate, for at least the life expectancies of the faculty who are currently teaching in the ISPN courses. And of course, it is indeed my qualification to give this talk, considering I have not attained the stature of Graciela, my opponent today, is not because I've been chairman of the Education Committee of the ISPN for the last 4 years, or co-chair of the Asia-Australasian Society of Pediatric Neurosurgery's Education Committee for 5 years, nor indeed is it because I have had the honor of being a professor of neurosurgery for now 23 years and a teacher for 28. But indeed, my main qualification to give this talk is that I am a member of the species of the Homo sapiens that has so far survived the pandemic. And what I'm going to talk to you about will fall into perspective if we step back to 2019 or early 2020, a time when the Education Committee was running courses worldwide, and all of us were traveling back and forth. And this is from the presentation I made as chairman of the Education Committee during the ISPN in Birmingham in 2019. And there were we, traveling to Yangon, Moscow, Bandung, Delhi, Dhaka, Agra, Guangzhou, Astana, Tbilisi, Argentina. And I hate to tell you, the chairman of the Education Committee that year traveled to all except one of these destinations. as all indeed our faculty did for the courses as we just traversed from one continent to the other in these aeroplanes, making bigger holes in the ozone layer than obviously nature would like us to have done. And everything was proceeding in the way that we all felt was appropriate. We had huge budgets. We spent 35,000 plus US dollars on faculty for these courses. And you can see that we had budget estimations of that year of close to 60,000 US dollars. And this was from a presentation where I was using the begging bowl to get some more money for the education committee from the EB. But everything changed. As a brainless blob of RNA descended on what we consider to be the most advanced species to inhabit this planet. And of course, we know about the death and devastation that followed. And of course, how our own family here at the ISPN were severely traumatized right in the beginning of the pandemic. So, as human beings, what are the lessons we learned? And I say this because it is on the background of this that you can appreciate what I'm going to say about education. I think we learned what I say are the 3 H's. We learned humility, because we understood that the Homo sapiens species could be brought down to their knees by a brainless blob of RNA. We, who Dr. Darwin told us was the most evolved species to be around on this earth, were now not only belittled, but humiliated by a virus. We learned human values. We learned how to do more with less, how to survive without supermarkets and malls and parties and visiting people and traveling the world. And the most important H we learned was the value of home. We learned to live at home. We appreciated what we had missed in the time we spent with people at home. And I will go back to these 3 H's as we talk about education. But what do we envisage is going to be the future of education? Well, number one, there will be only hybrid courses. Those that can physically be present will be present. But I reckon that more than half the faculty will choose to be virtually present on these courses. And there will change an emphasis from an emphasis on courses of didactic lectures addressed to 50, 60, 100 people. There will instead be a one-to-one mentorship. An ISPN will invest on getting individuals from these courses to be mentored with a particular member of the faculty, perhaps the one who will be physically present during the course. And of course, we will much improve our ability to cope with virtual learning and virtual teaching, so that people like Professor Dakling Pang will also agree to teach virtually. And we've just held a hybrid course in our own institute where some of the ISPN members were faculty. And I have to tell you, the lecturers may have been in Europe or in North America, but they were able to see the trainees in the auditorium while they spoke. So why will there be reasons for this change? And I say the reasons are following the alphabetical order: L, which is for logistics, M for money, N for numbers, O for options, and P for prejudices. This is the LMNOP of the reason for change in education. And let me, over the next 10 minutes, take you through each one of these. L, logistics. There will be a change of logistics on part of the organizers, part of the faculty, and part of the ISPN Education Committee. What will change? What are the logistics that an organizer faces? First, to get resources. to run a course. Find a venue which is suitable, politically neutral, where all the neurosurgeons would be willing to come. Then a hotel accommodation for the faculty, so that the faculty feel that they're being looked after. To arrange adequate audience, so you don't have 5 faculty speaking to an audience of 10. And then, of course, most organizers spend their time trying to work out what they can do for the recreation of the faculty and the trainees, i.e. having a little trip somewhere out to show us one of the sites of the local region. And all this involves a lot of logistic support. What about the faculty? Well, they have to continuously titrate the necessity of traveling to teach with staying at home. They have to leave their practice, they have to leave their homes. And remember how we've learned about homes over the pandemic. Particularly, they have to leave their homes over weekends when these courses are run. And they have to understand that the priorities of their traveling around the world to teach is much more important than their priorities of spending that weekend with their family at home. And finally, the logistics of the ISPN. Find faculty who are willing to travel, who will not cancel at the last moment. Find venues to run your courses where there is an audience need. And then, as I showed you right in the beginning, you have to provide the finances to run these courses. So that's L for logistics. Of course, M is for money. And the very last presentation I made in person to the EB of the ISPN as chairman of the education committee, I was asking for $55,000 plus US dollars for the faculty travel. We have to persuade good teachers, and good teachers are not always persuaded to travel, just like they're not always persuaded to teach virtually. And of course, at the same time, we have to ensure that we maintain standards, and all of these require that M for money. All this will be much less, just like the L for logistics reduces with hybrid courses, the M for money reduces with hybrid courses. And I'm again sharing with you a slide I presented to the ISPN EB in Birmingham, request for 8 courses, as I begged that we be allowed to exceed the budget a little bit, because we wanted to run a course in Eurasia. We wanted to run that course in Africa, and we wanted to run that course in China. And we asked for additional allocation every year. Well, L, M, N is for numbers. The most amazing thing about a hybrid program is that you can have a larger number of faculty. So instead of having, as per the rules of the education committee, for a 2-day course, 5 faculty, for a 3-day course, a faculty of 6, you can have a faculty of 10 teaching in a course, 5 physically and 5 virtually. Look at the number of trainees you can have. You can have 30 in that hall. You can have another 100, excuse me, tuning in, even from adjoining countries. And in fact, in my last presentation, which was last year to the EB, this is a list of virtual courses we held. Look at the number of participants: 300 in Russia, 90 in Vietnam, 100 plus in India, Bangladesh, Brazil, almost 90 in Africa. So that's the numbers. Look at the number of faculty. Would you ever have a physical course where you would have 10 faculty members from 4 continents? But that's what is possible with a virtual meeting. So M, N for numbers, and then O for options. You have options. You can decide what you want to do. You can have an option of physical versus hybrid. You can have an option of deciding how many people will be physical and how many people will be virtual, both in your faculty and in terms of those that are attending. You can have options of having 12 or even 15 faculty for a course. Imagine the amount of information you can get from 15 experts around the world. And of course, this money that you save, you have the option of resource reallocation. So maybe that money can be used for fellowships, for mentorship on a 1:1 basis, which would go a long way. And then P, the final letter, why the education will change, P for prejudices. Because of prejudices, international travel will never be the same again. You'll have to get those vaccines and boosters and certificates. You have to be from a favorable country before they allow you to travel. And of course, we know the prejudices that some countries will be blamed for the pandemic, some for having started it, some for having produced lethal strains of the virus, some for not having adequate vaccination, some for having too much vaccination. And therefore, this world will be divided by boundaries of prejudice, by boundaries of why we will all look upon other nations suspiciously, thinking these guys will come to infect us. And finally, the last prejudice, of course, is that some faculty members may be able to come physically and some may be able to come virtually. Remember that faculty members may have comorbidities, may have vaccination issues, may have age issues, and they may not be willing to travel physically, but may be present virtually in a hybrid course. And therefore the world will change. As Lord Tennyson wrote in The Passing of Arthur, the old order changes, yielding place to new, and God fulfills himself in many ways, lest one good custom should corrupt the world. And I, with apologies to Lord Tennyson, would think that perhaps it would fit in if one said, lest one good virus should corrupt the world. And we will have to have the old order change it so that we do not bow to the virus. Do not think that I say that it is not an advantage to teach like this, where you get a physical, psychological response from the audience immediately. Do not even think that I say that this is a far better option when you talk to computer faces. But the point is that you have to do with what is a reality. And reality is that you're going to have a combination of the two. And therefore, to conclude, as I say, lesson 1 in summary is that I always say, between yesterday's regrets and tomorrow's hopes, yesterday's regrets of not being able to attend physical courses, and tomorrow's hopes that the pandemic will end and we'll start traveling again, there lie today's opportunity. Let's seize them with 2 hands. Let us arrange hybrid and virtual courses. Lesson 2, and I say this always, and this is my personal prayer, and I say, we need to get the strength to change things we can change. The serenity to accept things we cannot change. And the most important thing is the wisdom to distinguish between the two. Lesson 3, in summary, is that change is the only certainty in life. Let's embrace the change, let's adapt it, let's accept it, and then let's work towards this change so we can still continue educating young neurosurgeons worldwide on the nuances of pediatric neurosurgery, rather than say, let's sit and wait for the opportunity to happen again. Remember, what is inevitable is not always ideal. What is comfortable is not crucial. And finally, if as members of the ISPN you do not get what you like, you have to learn to like what you get. And therefore, whether you like it or not, education has to change on this planet. Thank you.